Welcome. Today, I invite you on a journey inward. We're going to explore a theme central to many spiritual traditions, the path from ego to true self. It's a path that many describe as both challenging and deeply freeing. But what does it actually mean to let go of the ego? And what is it that we find when we do? What is the ego? To understand this journey, we first need to look at what we mean by the ego. For most of us, the ego is that part of our mind that creates a sense of I, separate from you. It's the voice that defines who we think we are, based on stories, beliefs, and experiences. The ego isn't necessarily a bad thing. It helps us navigate the world, forming identities and boundaries that shape how we see ourselves. But the ego has a shadow side. It thrives on comparison, control, and the need to be seen in a certain way. The ego often seeks validation from others, leading us to define our worth based on status, achievements, or how others perceive us. This attachment to identity and validation is what causes suffering. When we define ourselves by roles, successes, or failures, we become trapped in a cycle of constant striving, constantly chasing something outside of ourselves. So, what if there was another way to live, a way to move beyond the ego and reconnect with our deeper essence? The process of letting go. The journey from ego to true self begins with awareness. Imagine that you're observing your thoughts, watching the mind's need to control or defend. It might seem subtle, but this act of observing creates a small but powerful space between who you think you are and who you truly are. Letting go of the ego doesn't mean we destroy it or get rid of it entirely. Instead, it means we loosen our attachment to it. We begin to see that our identities, our roles, our titles, our stories, are not the whole of who we are. They are layers, like clothing, that we've put on to fit in, to feel safe, to be someone in the world. As we start to let go, a transformation happens. It's as if we're taking off layers that no longer serve us. By surrendering the need to control, to be right, to be seen in a certain way, we begin to tap into a state of presence, a place where we simply are. But surrender isn't easy. It can be uncomfortable, even frightening to release these layers. After all, they've become familiar. The ego might resist, telling us that without these identities, we'll lose our sense of self. But in reality, as we let go of the ego's grip, we create space for something far greater to emerge, our true self. Discovering the true self. So, what is this true self that lies beyond the ego? Many describe it as a profound sense of presence, a state of awareness where we are fully here, in this moment, free from labels or boundaries. This true self doesn't seek approval or validation because it knows at a deep level that it is already whole. The true self is compassionate, resilient, and connected. It doesn't cling to identities because it understands that all of life is interconnected. In this state, we experience ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as part of a much larger, boundless reality. We become aware that the essence within us is the same essence that exists in others, in nature, in life itself. This is the space where true peace resides, a peace that isn't dependent on external conditions but flows from within. Living from the true self. Living from this true self is not a one-time achievement. It's a practice, a way of being that we cultivate day by day, moment by moment. The journey from ego to true self is ongoing, like a dance. Sometimes the ego pulls us back into its stories and roles, and that's okay. The key is to recognize this and gently return to presence. With each return, we deepen our connection to the true self. We learn to approach life with more openness, more compassion, and less fear. We stop needing to prove ourselves, and instead, we live from a place of inner fullness. The pressures and anxieties of the ego soften, replaced by a sense of peace and purpose. An invitation to journey within. So, as we conclude, I invite you to reflect on this journey from ego to true self in your own life. What roles, identities, or expectations might be holding you back from fully experiencing your true essence? And in moments of quiet, can you create a little space to observe these layers, to see them for what they are? In the stillness of letting go, there's a profound freedom, a freedom that allows us to live not from fear or lack, but from a place of true presence, compassion, and connection. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May we all walk the path from ego to true self, finding peace and purpose in the depths of our own being.